Hey guys, so I've been getting so many questions lately on my seed starting schedule, and next week I'm actually going to be starting quite a few seeds. So I figured today I would sit down and just tell you guys my seed starting schedule, give you a seedling update, and let's also talk about the new varieties I'm going to grow in 2022. So to start off with the seedling update, I have only started celery and onions so far. So I started onions the very last week of December, and then I started celery 2 weeks later. I'm doing Chinese pink celery. Both those crops take a very long time. So now that the celery has been growing, I think it's been about 3.5 weeks now, it's starting to get its secondary leaves, which is really exciting. I will say the start of this year's celery is already looking better than last year. So celery and onions are very heavy feeders, and the more research I've done suggests to do some fertilizing while they are young in the seedling stage. So I have fertilized my celery and my onions once. I actually just recently did that, and right as I did that, all of those secondary leaves popped up with the celery. I also thinned out my celery, which also helped a lot. I've been making a lot of short form content lately just to give you guys tips and tricks, and I believe I've posted both of them here on YouTube, and if I did, I will link them. I have cut back my onions once. It's definitely time to go ahead and do that again. It's been, I believe, roughly 7 or 10 days since I cut back my onions, and they've grown a ton. Why you cut back your onions is to help with the development of the onions. It just creates a stronger bulb, and when they get about 5 inches in length, that's when it's time to cut. And you can clearly tell by the footage over this that these onions have grown significantly in that time frame. It's absolutely crazy. They are looking really good. The one thing with the onions that's been really interesting is I planted out all of my onions on the same day, same way, same everything, and the germination rate with my yellow Spanish was absolutely terrible. The onions that have been doing the best so far are my Australian brown, which is actually a new variety that I am growing this year. If you're in the middle part of the United States, typically they suggest an intermediate day onion, and this is what that is. There's not many intermediate varieties out there from what I have discovered, and I came across this one, and so far it's been my best one. I'm also growing Cabernet Reds and then the Spanish Yellow, but Spanish Yellow last year was my best one, so it's really interesting to see the differences between years on something like that. So as far as my seed starting schedule goes, guys, I'm Kansas Zone 6B. The one thing you want to know is even if you are Zone 6B, your frost date could be different than mine. So look up your area's last average frost date. Even though we could be in the same zone, we could have different average last frost. So here where I live, it's roughly always mid-April. They kind of tell you April 15th, April 16th. And in years prior, that's been great. And last year, our last frost was the first week of May. So it's kind of that 2-week window there that's kind of just weird ground, and that's one reason why I'm starting some of my seeds a little bit later this year. So as I was discussing at the very beginning, I already started my onions, which I will get you guys a close-up, but I organize my seeds out at the beginning of the year on when I need to start them, inside or outside. That way they are all clustered together. After I get done with the bulk of seed starting, once it becomes more summer, I will actually put them in containers by category. That way, when I am succession sowing throughout the garden, if I know I need to go ahead and plant more cucumbers, I can just grab my cucumber container, and that way I'm good to go. But this way I organize during these months because it just makes life so much easier. I can pick up this. These are what I need to start today. So in February, I have 2 separate things I will be doing. So next week, we are starting all of our tomatoes and peppers. I believe it's just all tomatoes and peppers in here. I don't think I have anything else but, tomatoes and peppers. And I also have some broccoli and some cabbage. So I am not growing a lot of broccoli and cabbage this year, not in the springtime. I'll be doing a lot of that more in the fall. So where I live, you know, Kansas is just a really weird climate where we get hot really fast in the spring, and that's just kind of how it goes. Our springs can kind of be all over the place. I've had springs that have been very cool, and I've had springs that have been really warm. And last year, for some reason, even though we had a late frost, it got really hot really fast, and all of my brassicas wilted. So I'm not going to be devoting a lot of space to them. There's areas of my garden that are a little bit more shady that I am going to put them in just to help the crop stay a little bit cooler. But I will be starting tomatoes, peppers, broccoli, and cabbage next week. Then in about 2 to 3 weeks after that, I have these for the last week of February to March 1st, roughly. This is the bulk of my flowers. Any herbs I'm going to be starting this year, it's going to be in here. I also have lettuce in here as well. And it's just because those things definitely don't need as long inside. And that's pretty much the bulk of everything I'm going to be starting inside for the rest of the year. I have 4 containers right here of all things I am direct sowing. So all the stuff I'm direct sowing is stuff like my sunflowers, my zucchini squash. I also have a ton of beans in here, and I will also be direct sowing so much throughout the season as well. It's just kind of how it goes. I actually love to direct sow because then you don't have all the seed starting equipment cleanup either, and it's just so nice. And here we have a pretty long growing season. If I remember right, I think we're like right under 200 days or a little over 200 days. I don't know. I will re-look that up and put it across the screen. But here in Kansas Zone 6B, we have a pretty extensive season. So I hope that gives you a better idea on as far as when I'm starting things when. If you want something that's more up to date, definitely go follow me on my Instagram or my TikTok. I've been updating you guys as far as stuff like this goes a lot more frequently over on there. So every year, even though I don't think I'm adding quite a few varieties, I always end up adding quite a few varieties. And I have a stack here today of new varieties I'm growing in 2022. So I already discussed the first one, which is the Australian brown onion. And I guess since I need to touch on this, I've already planted out garlic, obviously, and I planted out 7 new varieties that I've never grown before, but I have grown 1 out of the 8 varieties I planted, which was chestnut red. I planted a ton of chestnut red because it was so delicious. I need to re-look up the other varieties, but I have 8 different varieties of garlic right now as well. And then we also have onion chives. So I've grown garlic chives in the past. I just really love these as a perennial. They produce just beautiful flowers, and honestly, I like onion chives better than the garlic chives. I'm not the biggest fan of the garlic chives, and now that we completely ripped out the garden and I don't think they're going to come back at this point, I'm going to exchange them out for onion chives. All right, so then this year I'm actually going to be kind of dabbling even more into the medical herb side of things. I actually did finally get my hands on white sage. I love making sage bundles and burning them, and I'm so excited to finally have my hands on some white sage. This is actually one I will be starting next week as well. So I was reading up on white sage, and they can take up to 6 weeks to germinate, which is so crazy. Some of these medical herbs, I had peppermint last year. Peppermint took me so long to germinate last year, but apparently white sage is kind of very similar. So I will be starting this next week as well. I'm dabbling into some yarrow. I was so late on yarrow last year, and I was so upset. And by the time I wanted to start planting echinacea, I feel like I'm saying that wrong, but it sounds right. Echinacea. You know what I'm saying, this flower. Either way, when I went to go buy this last year, everyone was sold out by like February. Everyone. I could not get my hands on this seed until I think it was October when I finally was able to buy it. I was on an in-stock waiting list, so very, very excited about these 3 in particular. Oh man, okay, so this next one, guys, I am the worst at pronouncing things, I swear. I even Googled this and translated it. Okay, the common name is Blue Planet because I think everyone would butcher this. Here, look. It's a hybrid flower. Either way, how cool. It's like little fuzzy purple blue balls. Okay, I have it written down. Eugeneratum. Yeah, no, I'm not even, no. We're just going to always call this Blue Planet in my garden. Either way, I simply bought this because just, again, how cool is this flower? Okay, I simply fell in love with flowers last year, guys. So I dabbled more in flowers last year, even though I would say my garden is definitely focused toward producing vegetables and it being a main source of food for us. I do love putting flowers and different herbs and medical herbs throughout because I really love that potager feel. I love having beauty throughout, and it really does help with the pollinators. Especially last year, I noticed a huge difference because I planted at least some different kind of flower every few feet. Huge difference last year. So speaking of flowers, I might as well just go ahead and jump into the other flower I bought. I bought Mongolian giants. So I grew all Russian mammoths last year, and my biggest Russian mammoth was 14 feet tall, which was so exciting. So these Mongolian giants actually average 12 to 14. So, I mean, that's average. Maybe I can get like a 15 to 16 foot sunflower. I don't know. I'm hoping. I plan to plant 3 of these. I planted way too many Russian mammoths last year, and sunflowers that are this large are very, very heavy feeders. So you kind of have to make sure that you're not just depleting your soil entirely, but I am so pumped to see how big I can grow these. One thing I think would be super cool, even though they do deplete the soil, is how neat would it be if there was like a mammoth or Mongolian giant sunflower maze instead of a corn maze, because corn is like, what, 6 feet tall? This would be like double. It would be so crazy. I think it'd be a really cool idea. All right, so then I have 2 different bean varieties. We have the Tavera, which is a bush fillet type of variety. I typically grow Blue Lake in the past, has been my absolute favorite. What was the other one I grew last year? I would need to look up the variety. Either way, it wasn't my husband and I's favorite, but it was still a good green bean. But I love Blue Lake. I don't know what it is about the Blue Lake variety in particular. Love Blue Lake. So I bought, I think, like 3 or 4 packs of Blue Lake bush beans to succession sow throughout the year. But I also bought Blue Lake pull beans, which is an FM/1K. So it is a type of hybrid variety. This is typically a bush plant, but this has been crossed to be a pull variety. And since I have so many trellises throughout my garden, I really wanted to have some trellis beans as well. I have noticed in the past that I feel like trellis beans last a little bit longer than the bush, probably because of airflow purposes, but either way, green beans are a huge staple in our house, and I really want to put back a ton next year. We ate through all of our green beans by December this year, which was really sad. One thing I do not have here is I actually bought seedling potatoes, Gold Rush seedling potatoes, and honestly, this kind of was a disappointment. I initially ordered from Johnny's, and this was my very first Johnny's purchase ever. I always hear people talk about Johnny's, but Johnny's can be kind of expensive, and you tend to buy a little bit more of a bulk seed from Johnny's. Either way, first Johnny's purchase, I bought these Gold Rush seedling potatoes. They're supposed to be shipped to me somewhat April. I get an email like last week or something saying that they were going to be completely out of stock and I could no longer get them, which was very sad. Then I went on a whole deep dive on the internet, and I get very indecisive very fast on trying to pick new varieties for my garden, especially potatoes, because potatoes is something I've very kind of dabbled in. It's never been a good experience. So this year I was like, yes, we are buying good seedling potatoes and we're going to try. Okay, so either way, I finally found another supplier for organic Gold Rush seedling potatoes that's supposed to be here mid-April. So we are going to be planting those as well. That was a very long story for potatoes. I'm sorry. Another new thing I am excited to grow, which is just interesting in itself. This can average 6 to 15 feet tall. This will not be directly in the garden space. We're going to plant this along our fencing to maybe give us a little bit more privacy along this side. This is a broom corn. This is what you can make brooms out of. And I don't know what, it was like September. I got this random urge that I thought it'd be so neat to attempt to grow my own broom and make my own broom and make this like a fall winter project. So we're going to attempt that. If it doesn't work out, it has these beautiful seeds that you can actually cut off and use as fall decor, and you can also feed the birds. And since I'm going to have chickens, this is something that they can eat as well. So either way, it's going to be used for something. All right, so the next 4 varieties are all things I'm going to be trellising as well. So first up, I talked about this a handful of times now, I have honey nut squash. One reason why I'm excited about this is a hybrid variety, but it's supposed to be resilient to vine borer. And in Kansas, vine borer is something I've never been able to have a season without. Apparently it's native to here, and it's just, it's a bitch to deal with. It's just so annoying. It's annoying. So if you live in my zone, know what to look for, because vine borer can just be very, very pesky. But this is supposed to be very resistant, and it's supposed to be a type of squash that is very similar to butternut, but a little bit smaller. So this is perfect to trellis if you're doing any type of vertical gardening. And speaking of like small little things, I bought these really cute luxury pie pumpkins. I really wanted pumpkins last year. I was so set. I built that really cool A-frame pumpkin trellis, right? I planted out pumpkins 3 separate times and cucumbers on that trellis last year too. And you know, sometimes your plans honestly just do not work. I don't know, but last year was just not a pumpkin year for me. Some years you have better years than others, and last year just was not a pumpkin or a cucumber year for me, actually. So I have 2 different varieties of cucumbers right now. I am going to be ordering a few more because I'm not sure. I bought these when I couldn't get my hands on any pickling cucumbers, even though the Market More can be a cross. It's more of a slicing pickle, but the Monica cucumber tends to be a pickling slicing cucumber. I don't really know. Either way, these both average 4 to 5 inches, which is perfect for pickling. But yeah, last year I tried the Boston pickling cucumber and had an absolutely terrible experience with it. Yeah, no, that was awful for cucumber beetle. I have a way better idea for pest control this year. Last year was very, very, very difficult to keep certain pests, especially cucumber beetle, away because we just had a very wet season, and any type of organic pesticide you use will typically wash off the moment it gets wet. And when you have a wet season, it can just kind of be tricky sometimes with pests. So keep that in mind if you have a wetter season this year. Hopefully we have a decent season. I mean, I didn't have to water that much last year. It was really nice. Either way, that's my new varieties for 2022. And that's also my scheduling for my seeds. So if you guys have any particular questions at all as far as when to start things when, you can ask me down below. My best advice to most people is to do a simple Google search of the town you live in and then last average frost date, and that will kind of give you a better idea. Most seed packets will tell you to either sow outside or when to start inside. So I don't think, there's a few of these I can start inside. So for example, I can start these ones inside 4 to 6 weeks before I have to put them out, but something like a squash tells me to direct sow. So I would find my last average frost, which for me is April 16th, backtrack 4 to 6 weeks, and that would be when I would start these in particular. So I hope that helps you guys out. This is kind of my plan, and next week we are going to be starting our tomatoes and peppers, which is so exciting. I actually thought about starting peppers this week, but you know, I'm just gonna wait. Patience. I hope you guys all have a great week. I'll see you guys all next week. Bye.